We'll discuss tonight a little bit about the mitzvah of tochacha, the mitzvah of rebuke. Hochiach tochiach es amisecha. The Torah tells us that if you see another fellow Jew doing something wrong, so there's a mitzvah of rebuke. So obviously there's a whole discussion today, as we'll see, whether this mitzvah applies today or not. When should you tell? Should you always tell? Etc. So that's what we'll try to see a little bit about the geder of the mitzvah of tochacha. So the Gemara tells us in Be'ah and Daf Lamed, when it talks about, and Tosas over there discusses, when we talk about the mitzvah of tochacha, the Gemara and Tosas discusses the mitzvah of Tosefes Yom HaKippurim. That it says if women are still doing malacha, eating during Tosefes Yom HaKippurim, you shouldn't be mocha. You shouldn't protest, because mutav she'eshogegin, better to violate the sin unintentionally than to violate it b'mezid intentionally. So we see that the mitzvah of better to violate it unintentionally applies even to a mitzvah daraisa. The Tosefes Yom HaKippurim is a mitzvah min Torah. So we see, according to Tosas, even on a mitzvah min Torah, we say better that a person violate the sin b'shogeg than do it b'mezid. And in fact, Rabbi Yehuda HaChassid, in one of his examples of Wufnei Iver, we'll see Tei Mechshel putting a stumbling block in front of the blind, he says misplaced tochacha. That sometimes if your tochacha is misplaced, you're going to cause more harm than good, and then you end up causing more damage, and therefore you violate Wufnei Iver. So, what exactly is the Geter Hadin of the mitzvah of tochacha? So there's a Gemara in Yevamos and Daf Samech. The Gemara says there's a mitzvah to rebuke someone when you think they're going to listen to you. And just like there's a mitzvah to rebuke someone when they're going to listen to you, so too there's a mitzvah not to say anything, to keep your mouth shut when you think a person's not going to listen to you. So we see in the Gemara in Yevamos that sometimes it's better, if you feel that it's not going to be constructive, it's not going to help the situation, it's a mitzvah to keep your mouth shut. Like sometimes chesed is asking someone to do something for you, but sometimes chesed is by not asking the person. If it's going to be a big burden on the person, they really don't want to do it, but they're not going to tell you no. So sometimes the biggest chesed is by not asking. So too, similar here, so too, sometimes there's a mitzvah of tochacha by talking to someone. Other times the mitzvah is better to say nothing. And therefore, so we see from that Gemara, seems to be in a situation where you don't think it's going to be of toelis, of help, better not to say anything. However, the Gemara in Erechet and after Zion seems to contradict this. The Gemara wants to know, how far does one have to go? How much abuse does one have to take when you're giving tochacha to your friend? So, the different opinions in the Gemara, but the opinion of Rabbi and Shmuel is, one says up until the person's about to curse you out, ad kadei kala, and others say ad kadei hakal, until they're about to hit you. So it appears from this Gemara that even if it's not going to be helpful, even if it's not going to be meaningful, they're going to curse you, beat you up, and nevertheless there's a mitzvah of tochacha. So it appears from this Gemara there's a mitzvah of tochacha even when there's not going to be any toelis, it was not going to be any help in this situation. But in the Gemara in Yevamos it says there is no mitzvah, keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. So how do we reconcile this apparent contradiction? So there's different approaches. One is the Shita Mikubetes in Baba, I think it's Baba Mitzia Daf Lamed Aleph. He says it's no contradiction. He offers a psychological insight to what we're saying. So in other words, he's saying like this, that sometimes we know, and we see it in our own life, Is sometimes you say something, it's totally indifferent, totally ignoring you. You see, you're not getting to that person at all. And other times you seem to hit a chord. You say something, you speak to the person, it seems to work them up. So Shita Megad is right. The mitzvah is not to, it's like there's a mitzvah to give tochacha when it's going to help. There's a mitzvah not to say anything. That's what the Gemara says. When you see totally indifference and no reaction whatsoever, therefore it's better to keep your mouth shut. But over here, if you see he's getting angry, he's about to curse you or hit you, that means you've hit a chord. So you can still go up until you don't have to get hit or cursed out, but up until that point, you're going to give tochacha. So you see, tochacha, the rule is, you give tochacha only when it helps, and the Gemara and Yavamas is talking about when it's not going to help. Excuse me. And the Gemara in Erekan talks about when there's still hope. You see, you hit a chord, you're getting to them. That's one approach. The second approach is on the Avnei Nezer. The Avnei Nezer says there's a difference between if someone is doing the sin intentionally b'mezid, and someone's doing the sin b'shogeg, someone's doing the sin unintentionally. So the Avnei Nezer says when he's doing it b'shogeg unintentionally, that's when you should keep your mouth shut, because better to violate it b'shogeg than to violate b'mezid. If the person's doing this sin b'mezid, if he's doing it intentionally anyway, so what's the point? He knows it's wrong, so then you should try to give him tochacha. That's the explanation of the Avnei Nezer. The differences between Yachid, Shogeg versus Mezid. And the other is a third school of thought is no, even if it's Mezid, it still applies. In other words, even if in other words, the difference is in Shogeg or Mezid, whether it's Shogeg or Mezid, that's not the issue. The issue is whether it's you're speaking to the Yachid or you're talking to the Rabbi. In other words, even according to his opinions who'd say b'mezid that you should give them rebuke, but that's only mezid b'yachid. That's only mezid if you're talking one-on-one. If you're talking in a group setting, then don't rebuke. Why don't you rebuke? Either because the mitzvah of tochacha by definition is one-on-one, or perhaps no. There's no difference, Rabbim or Yachid, in terms of fundamentally. The mitzvah is that you should be heard, that there should be some results. So you're much more likely to connect when it's one-on-one, as opposed to in a group matter. I'm not talking about a rabbi giving a sermon in the shul or a mashkiach giving a mitzvah shmuz or something else. So therefore, that's some explain that when it's one-on-one, you have a better chance of it working. But if it's barabim, so you don't really have much of a choice. It's unlikely it's going to help, and therefore you don't get. There's no mitzvah of tochacha. So this issue of whether, so there seems to be a fundamental issue: is there a mitzvah to give tochacha even when you know there's not going to be results? I mean, you never know anything. You never know. You never know what something's going to happen or not anyway. But let's say, as much as you know, let's say like we see in Parashas Bo al Paro, and he hardened his heart, and he still gave them the Hasra. In other words, is the mitzvah of tochacha to make a macha, to make a stand, even though no one's going to listen, or the ikar is the result-oriented, like we find by the Medrash that says there are 3 advisors to Paro. Moshe, Yisro, Eov, and Bilam. And they all punished or rewarded Mida Keneged Mida. Yisro, who ran away, he was given his kids a prominent position in Beis Din in other areas. Bilam was that killed the Jews, as Bilam Emar Hargu Bachar, Bilam himself was killed. And Eov, who was silent, he lived a life of Yisurim, of suffering. So Bishlam, I understand, Yisro gave up a position, he got a position. Bilam wanted to kill the Jews, he got killed. I see Mida Keneged Mida. But where's the Mida Keneged Mida being silent, not saying anything, like Eov, and living a life of Yisurim. So Brisker Rav explains, and I'll give a mashal, is, let's say a person's in a shower, and all of a sudden the water gets hot, boiling hot. So what do? You scream, you do and you jump out. Let me ask you something. Does screaming take away the pain? No, the scars on your back, the burn, it's still there. But as they say in Yiddish, if it hurts, you scream. It's a normal reaction. If someone's in pain, you scream out. Iyo, even though you may not have been successful, you should make a macha for the sake of macha. Like there's a discussion in terms of when they had rallies for Russia, Soviet Union. So there's a discussion what you should do. Some people had demonstrations, others said you should write letters. But whatever the right thing, whatever you thought the right thing was. So there's two issues. Number one is, hopefully you're not going to make it worse there. But number one is, you make a macha on something, you want to get a desired result. But in addition to that, the macha is that there's evil being done, you want to make a protest. So similarly here, is the mitzvah of tochacha. Is it a din of kavod shamayim? Even if the guy's not going to listen, who cares? You know he's not going to listen. I'm making a protest because how dare you go against, violate the word of God. Or no, really the purpose of tochacha is to get the desired result, and if you don't think you're going to get it, better to keep your mouth shut. So this seems to be a machlokas Rashi and the Ramban. And the pasuk itself, Ochiach Tochiach as Amisecha, so the pasuk is about it shall lead to sin. So what does that mean? What does the end of the pasuk mean? So Rashi learns it means he's just being descriptive. So you have to be very, very careful when you give a rebuke to someone. You shouldn't make the situation worse than it is. You shouldn't embarrass that person publicly. The way you give the rebuke, you should be very careful that it shouldn't lead to more sin. It's bad enough what's happening, by you rebuking in the wrong way, the consequences are much worse. So therefore, that's what Rashi writes. That when you give rebuke, it shouldn't lead to more sin. You should be careful, even when you're entitled to rebuke, make sure you do it in the proper fashion. And the Ramban says no. It's not a descriptive fashion. He's telling that when you give the tochacha, make sure the tochacha is going to have a desired result. That a person's going to listen and make it better for the person, because if you're going to give the person rebuke and he's not going to listen anyway and he keeps on doing it, it's going to make it worse and worse. Like when you have a warning for a sin. So that's what the Ramban writes. Built in to the mitzvah, it seems to be built into the mitzvah of tochacha, is that it's result oriented. That the point that don't give rebuke unless it's going to be helpful, as opposed to giving rebuke. So it seems to be the machlokas Rashi and the Ramban, whether according to Rashi one could argue even for kavod shamayim it's enough, but according to the Ramban you only give rebuke in a case where there's going to be a positive result there, which will lead to more sin. This to summarize. We began discussing the mitzvah of tochacha, the mitzvah of rebuke, and we pointed out it seems to be an apparent contradiction in terms of the parameters. On one hand, the Gemara says in Yavamas, if it's not going to be effective, keep your mouth shut. Just like there's a mitzvah to give rebuke when they're going to listen, there's a mitzvah to keep quiet when they're not going to listen. On the other hand, we find the Gemara in Erech and Rav and Shmuel that, no, even if the person's going to hate you, even if the person's going to curse you, still the mitzvah is to give rebuke. So we have an apparent contradiction. Do you give rebuke even in a situation where it's not going to have any desired result? So A1 was that, no, the answer is you only give rebuke when you have a desired result. But as the Shita Mekobesis explains, the psychological insight, the Gemara in the Bamis is talking about the person's indifferent. There's no response. No response is the worst possible thing. And therefore you might as well stop. But if you see you hit a chord, the guy's getting upset, so you can still rebuke him up until the time he's about to curse you or in the time he hit you. The Avnei Eidim makes the distinction shogeg versus mezid. If he's doing it b'shogeg, don't do it, it's going to make things worse. But it's b'mezid, so then already you could give the tochacha. And others say no, the distinction is even if it's mezid, but only if it's a yachid, but not to a rabbi, because you have a better chance that the rebuke's going to take effect when you're giving it to one and not to 20. And we pointed out that whether there's a mitzvah of tochacha even when there's no result, that seems to be machlokas Rashi and Ramban, how you learn the end of the pasuk. Rashi just learns a descriptive, be careful how you give the rebuke, you should embarrass someone, but perhaps according to Rashi, it's all about kavod shamayim, it's a ben adam l'makom, you're protecting the kavod of God. Or I say no, the mitzvah of tocha is result oriented, like the Ramban seems to be saying, that the reason is built into the rebuke, and if the rebuke is going to make things better, give rebuke, but if the rebuke's going to lead to sin, make it worse, so then better, as the Gemara says in Yavamas, better not to give any rebuke. And today, many also have lost the art of rebuke. It's, even in a situation where you're allowed to give rebuke, you have to make sure you know how to give rebuke, because the misplaced rebuke, as Rabbi Yehuda Chassid pointed out, could be a violation of putting a stumbling block in front of the blind.